Greetings and salutations, this is Kyllax here with my second episode in my lesson plan to get better at Smite. So in this episode I'll be looking at the terminology both of MOBAs and of Smite specifically, and just kind of giving an overview of what they mean. So the first thing I'm going to look at is, and give a brief explanation of, is the match types. So these are the different game types that you will encounter when playing Smite. First one is the most common and the one that you'll probably see the most footage of, and that's the Conquest Match. This is 3 lanes, a jungle with 2 towers and 1 phoenix per lane. The aim of the game is to destroy the enemy Minotaur, and note that this is the only ranked match type currently. This is known as the Solo Master Queue, which is a subtype of the Conquest Match type because it uses the exact same map. Now there are a few caveats before you can even queue for this match type. The first and biggest one probably is that your account must be at level 30 before you can queue for this. Second one is that you must have at least 12 gods at adept level. That means you must have at least 50 worshippers in 12 different gods before you can queue as well. And that's because you cannot select a god that you do not have at adept level. Now the selection for this game type is also different. It's a drafting style where each team will be given the opportunity to ban a god or two, and then once selection starts, if a god is picked, the other team cannot pick that god. So basically no more Thor versus Thor action. There will be one Thor on the map. That's it. The second subtype for the Conquest Match type is the pre-made Conquest Match type. The caveat for this is that you must be in a party of 5 people in order to queue for this match type. It's a match type I don't recommend for new players because generally the 5 people that you're going to face against are going to be on some kind of Ventrilo or TeamSpeak server, and they're going to be talking to each other and probably have a lot of experience playing with each other, so I just recommend avoiding it until you get more comfortable. The second match type I want to touch on is the arena match type. So it's just like the Colosseum in Rome where the gladiators used to fight and spill blood for the god's favor, and where a bunch of people were fed to some hungry lions. On the left and right side of the maps are 3 buff camps: the mana buff, the damage buff, and the speed buff. On the top and bottom of the map there is the spawning pools, as well as 2 towers. And then on the outside of those spawning pools is the portals. Now the goal of the game, the match, is to reduce the enemy tickets to 0. There are a few ways that you can do this. 1 is you can kill enemy gods. 2 is you can kill enemy minions. 3 is you can get your minions through the enemy's portal. And 4, and probably the most difficult, is killing the enemy's towers. Match type number 5 is the Joust match type. It can be either 1v1 or 3v3. It also has 1 lane, 1 tower, 1 phoenix. There are small jungles on the left and right side of the map with 3 buff camps on each side. And the goal is similar to Conquest. You want to kill the enemy Minotaur. The last match type I'm going to touch on is the match of the day. You might see the acronym MOTD. This is just a random match that changes daily. Sometimes it's an arena type with only Egyptian gods to play from. Then the next day it'll be a conquest match with random gods and 100k starting gold. And then the following day it'll be the Battle of the Beards, where you can only play characters that have epic beards on them. It's just a random match for fun that Hi-Rez came out with. So yeah, have fun with it. Moving along from match types, we're just going to kind of dive into the NPCs, or the non-playable characters, the PvE, you might hear them described as the player versus environment elements in the game. And we'll start off with the minions. Now these are the nameless warriors who battle for the love of their gods. And much like the same people on Tatooine, they like to march in a single line until they encounter something to attack. Now using the Conquest Match type as an example, there are always 6 minions per wave, 3 melee, 3 archers. But as the game progresses, more of the melee minions are replaced by bigger minions that can take more punishment and as well as dish out more damage. Now, it should be noted that attacking an enemy god will divert enemy minions from your minions towards you. And when you are at very low levels of the game, minions hurt a lot. It should be also taken into consideration that this is true if you're in range of towers, phoenixes, or the minotaur. So bottom line up front, don't attack an enemy god if you're in range of something unless you can take the beating. Should a phoenix be destroyed, the minion waves that spawn on the opposing side of that lane become fire minions, which are imbued with the essence of their phoenix, and they do a lot more damage and are a lot harder to kill. Now, left alone, fire minions will kill the phoenix once it respawns, and if you leave them alone for extended periods of time and in enough numbers, they will kill a minotaur. So speaking of towers, much like the towers of medieval times, these towers are structures and lanes that will attack the enemy from up on high. Now, each tower has a ring indicator that lets you know when you are in range of the tower. It doesn't make a noise or anything, but it will pop on the screen saying that you are targeted whenever a tower targets you. But essentially, the ring is just a line in the sand that lets you know if you go beyond this, you are in range of this tower. Now, the first enemy to enter a tower's range, be it minion or god, is immediately targeted. When that's you, unless you're an extremely tanky character who can take the punishment, it's advisable to leave the tower's range, at which time it will either stop attacking if there's nothing within its range, or it will change its target. Much like minions, should you decide to attack an enemy god while they are in their tower and you are in the range of the tower will stop focusing whoever it is attacking at that moment, and it will immediately start focusing you. It should be noted, towers are immune to abilities and passives and are only vulnerable to attack damage. So basically, don't waste your abilities trying to destroy a tower. Moving along, Furies and Cyclopses. So in the Conquest, Arena, and Domination match types, there are camps. And inside these camps are guardians that either you kill in order to get XP and gold and a buff, or just XP and gold. Now, they range in difficulty. Generally, the Furies are easier than the Cyclopses, and if you're looking for a buff or some more farm for some experience and or gold, then the path runs through these camps. Now, there are also 2 special camps in the Conquest match type. There's the Gold Fury camp and the Fire Giant camp. Now, in both of these, there's just one guardian, but they are extremely difficult. Not something to be attempted at until you reach higher levels in the game. Now, the Gold Fury obviously rewards you with gold, and the Fire Giant will reward your entire team with a damage buff. The next NPC is the Sand Guardians. They are in the Domination match type only, and they are very similar to towers in that they will target any enemy within their range, and should you attack an enemy god within their range, you will be targeted. Now, these guardians can change owners and change loyalty, so it should be noted that if the guardian falls with a god or gods from both teams, then the team that stays in the circle the longest wins the guardian. And it is also worth mentioning that pop-ups and or knock-ups that knock you into the air will essentially, it considers you not in the circle anymore, and therefore you will lose the Sand Guardian. Next are the Phoenixes, which, much like towers, stand as defensive positions that guard your Minotaur. The Phoenixes' difference from towers is that they will regenerate health, and if a Phoenix should be destroyed, it will reappear in 3 minutes, although it will not be at full health. Eventually it will regenerate back to full health, though. Finally, the Minotaurs. Now, these are the big bosses. In the Conquest and Assault game types, they're the objectives that must be killed in order to win the game. The Minotaur can and will move around and defend himself whenever an enemy is within range, and they can dish out a lot of damage, generally killing normal minions in one shot. Please note I said normal, not fire minions. Abilities can hurt Minotaurs, but they are immune to slows, stuns, and crowd control. Any phoenixes and or towers that are still standing at a particular time give the Minotaur a defensive buff. With all 3 phoenixes still standing, the Minotaur will heal. So sometimes it's in your team's best interest to avoid going to kill the Minotaur and instead focus on taking down the other phoenixes, thus getting rid of the defensive buff that the Minotaur has and making it easier to kill. Transitioning now from PvE to the just general terminology that you may encounter in the game and what they mean. So the lanes. One is the mid lane. In Conquest, it's the middle lane on the map between the left and the right lane, obviously. Whereas in Domination, it is meant to signify the middle Sand Guardian. Then you have the left, which is the left lane on the map and or left Sand Guardian. You may hear it described as top lane because in other MOBAs, the left lane is on the top of the map. Be aware that the map in Smite is not symmetrical, so left lane is not always the short lane. Then you have right lane, or right Sand Guardian. Again, you may hear it called bottom, which means that the person has experience with other MOBAs because the right lane on some of the other MOBAs is on the bottom of the map. Then you have short lane and or fire giant lane. This is the lane with the shortest distance between towers. It can be called fire giant side because the fire giant buff is next to it in the jungle. After that, you have the long lane, and or sometimes called the gold fury side. This is the lane that has the longest distance between your towers. Finally, you have the jungle. So this is the area in between lanes, especially in Conquest, not so much in Domination. And Joust, the side areas that have buffs and buff camps and XP and gold camps. Next term is farming, which is just simply means killing minion waves and fury camps in order to get gold and experience points. Then there's positioning. Now this is just placing yourself correctly in a lane. It's especially important in solo and mid lanes, but it's dependent upon your opponent. What you never want to do is give your opponent the opportunity to get a free shot on you and your minions at the same time. It took me getting my butt handed to me by a Poseidon to realize that I needed to move out of the center of the lane in order to avoid his whirlpool clear of my minions. Next term is leashing. You may hear it called kiting. This is starting a fury or buff camp and then backing off when the last one is near death in the camp. And this is so that your partner gets the last hit and also to avoid you accidentally taking a buff that they need. Then there's body blocking. This is placing yourself in the way of your enemy's escape route in order to keep them from getting away. Now this is an important thing for tanks to learn in order to help your teammates secure kills. If you want to read a funny description and explanation of it, check out Land of America's post on Reddit. The link is below in the description to this video. It's hilarious. Now next is a term that I think may be Smite specific, but I'm not sure because, like I said, I haven't played any other MOBAs, and I still don't play any other MOBAs because Smite's ruined them for me. But anyway, the term is called dunking. Now this is using an ability that jumps or drops down from up on high in order to kill an enemy. Then there's ganking. That's just basically attempting to kill a player. Usually, and especially in the Conquest matches, you'll see somebody rotate and come in through the jungle and just try to kill somebody. Then you have the stages of the game. You'll hear these terms thrown around. I'm still a little fuzzy on when each one starts and when each one ends because it's kind of variable. But you have the early stage of the game. In Conquest, it's basically the start of the match, and then it goes into the laning phase, where everybody is in their respective lanes, and they're clearing minion waves and trying to get some poke damage, or, you know, just little ticks of damage against the opposing team in order to push up the wave and try to take towers. Then after that, you have the mid stage of the game. You'll start seeing some rotations occur, ganks coming from the junglers, and a little bit less laning, and then finally you get into the late stage of the game. I would say probably about the 15 to 18 minute mark, start looking for laning to break down, and look for people to start rotating to other lanes and grouping up in order to have huge team fights. Now this is the portion where I give you my suggestions, tips, and recommendations that I came up with from this episode. One is avoid enemy minions without some of your own minions around, especially at early levels. One of the biggest mistakes that I made as a new player was I would attack an enemy god when they had their minions, but I didn't have my minions. So basically, I was facing the enemy god and his minions, and he was just facing me. So I was very outnumbered, and I would die very quickly. 2 is don't enter tower / phoenix / minotaur range without minions or a beefy tank who can take the damage. Basically for the same reasons as the first tip. 3rd is the question that I ended up asking myself after this, or during this stage of my lesson plan, was what match type should I play first? Now there's a recent patch that Hi-Rez came out with that limits the matches that you can play at early levels. At level 1, you can only play Conquest, Arena, and Joust 3v3. Of those 3 match types, I recommend you play Practice first. Yes, I said practice. We're talking about practice. Do some practice first, and after that, then go into Arena. After you've gotten some familiarity with Arena, then try Conquest. After Conquest, then try Joust 3v3. I just say it in that order because Conquest and Joust 3v3 just has a lot more to recognize, and it just takes a lot more to play those match types than it does Arena. Arena just has a lot less going on for it. All the other match types you can play once you hit level 6, except for Conquest Solo Master, which is reserved for level 30. And thus ends my episode on the terminology and words and phrases that you'll hear in Smite. Should you feel that anything is incorrect, please post in the comments below, or send it to my email, or send it to my Twitter. I know I didn't cover every single thing that you will hear in game, but I hope that this gave you just a general sense of some of the things that you'll encounter. Anyway, I hope you learned a lot, and I hope to see you in game.